Everybody, welcome to the Effects Loop. I'm Chris,
I'm Marissa.
I'm Diaz.
I'm Scott.
and we're keeping you in the loop of the guitar community.
This episode's brought to you by Lambertone Pickups. They sent us in the cremas for us to try out. They're a PAF style pickup, and they sound absolutely amazing. Go give them a follow on Instagram. Go look at their website. Give them, dang it, just check them out.
That works.
I'm ever since you brought them up, I've been seeing them all over the place. Their social media presence is getting pretty big.
Yeah, it seems that they're really making a big push. Like we said in the last episode, they're pretty fairly new, but they make an amazing product. So, I hope they get out there and a lot of people pick them up. It seems that they're going to be I'd say they're going to be really big in the praise and worship community, kind of cater towards that. And, there's quite a few different pickups. There's a lot of single coils out there and everything, but, humbuckers, I don't see a whole lot of the boutique catered towards praise and worship musicians. So, all right, and then we're gonna go. We're on what's new with everybody. So we'll start with Chris. What's new with you?
I sold my semi-prized possession of my 1984 TS9.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah, that was a big hoopla about your shipping, wasn't it? Or
Yeah, and everyone was like, "Oh, just throw it in a bag; it'll be fine." It's like, no, not a $250 pedal that I really can't afford to replace for somebody or refund if it shows up broken.
Yeah,
so
well,
they're getting insurance and a signature. So.
That's Marissa's shopping money, and she would not be happy.
Yeah, really.
She'll cut you, right, Marissa?
Wow. No.
No, you won't cut him.
Lies.
I think she'll cut you. I know my wife will.
If I go silent for more than like 5 minutes, you all know what happened.
We need to get like an emergency button that you can hit that just sounds an alarm on the podcast. So, and then Chris, you got that sold. Wait, well, here's my question. At what point is a TS9 a vintage TS9? What's the year? Usually there's like a year before and after.
I feel like I've seen everything like pre-89. Like 89 is like the starting year before it becomes vintage.
Is there something significant that changed?
What
year did Stevie Ray Vaughan die? I think that was the year.
No, I think that has more to do with like the chipset that's in it, the JRC455, something like that. That's the chip that my 84 had, and everything I want to say 85 had that chip, and then they went to something super similar for the rest of for the 80s, and then the 90s they switched to some cheaper thing when they moved production to Indonesia or Korea.
Yeah, because Maxon.
That's where the big change comes, is the production. Did you have something to say? You're waving at me. Okay.
She's got a knife. That's a knife in her hand, Chris. Watch out. Welcome to the Effects Loop, the hostile wife stabbing Chris podcast. Because I always thought that was kind of weird. So that's like take away the screwdriver, because the Rat, the LM308 chip is the one that people are kind of sought after on that. Is that the right one, Scott? Anyone know?
I'm not a big Rat guy, so.
I have never played a Rat.
What? How have you guys never? The Woodcutter is like my favorite Rat pedal of all time. Which I can't believe. Scott, did you not play the Woodcutter over at NAMM last year?
Yeah, I tried it out. Yeah, I did the whole Big Ear booth and tried all their stuff out. I liked it. I just, it's one of those things of like, it's good. It's just not good for what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think my obsession with Dave Grohl really helps with that, because that was kind of his rig setup for a while, was a Rat into an AC30, if I remember correctly. So I like the tones that I can get out of it.
Yeah, and I'm having a similar effect right now with I have a JHS kilt, like the V1 kilt, and it's like I love it on its own in isolation, or like trying it with other stuff, and then I put it into my board, and I don't touch it. It just doesn't fit with like my usual what I do.
Yeah, it's kind of how my Pelotar is. It just sits on the board unless I like super need something.
Speaking of JHS version 1s, that kind of leads into Scott's. What's new-ish?
Yeah, I'm still waiting on it. There was a fire sale over at the JHS Reverb store. I picked up a unicorn for $99. I'm really looking forward to trying it. I remember when they announced it, and I thought it was cool. I thought it sounded really good. I've been wanting to try it since. I just haven't really had the opportunity. So I figured, this was a good opportunity. I'd probably be able to get my money back on the used market if I don't like it.
Yeah, because you could sell that for $100 all day, every day.
I think so. I think they were going for like $150 on the used market. I mean, temporarily, that's going to get all thrown off by all these. Yeah, everyone buying one and flipping one. So
I want to see Reverb's the price guide go on that. It's going to plummet. It's going to be like the stock market
didn't with
crash.
the kilt, though.
It didn't?
So, when they did the V2 kilt and they cleared out the V1s, they did a similar fire sale, and like everyone jumped on board, but I didn't really see the used market take that big of a hit because I think, frankly, a lot of people said, all right, if I'm going to flip it, I'm going to wait a month.
Well, the weird thing about the V1 and V2 kilt is it's kind of like the, was it Bondi effects, the Del Mar and the breaker pedal, which isn't a blues breaker, by the way, which kind of throws me off.
Yeah.
But
meaning that my kilt's going to be worth $500 in 3 months?
I didn't mean like that.
Okay.
What I meant was they sold them, and there was a bunch of people. There was one guy who ordered like 2 V1s, and he got like a V2, and he was mad. He's like, I wanted the V1. Is the boost no longer independent on the V2?
On the V2, the red remote does one of the gain channels. It doesn't do the boost.
And so it doesn't have a boost on it. So that's why people are...
Yeah.
Is the V1 independent channel, or is it an independent boost, or does a kilt have to be on to use the boost?
It's independent, and you can flip order, too. So it can be after the gain or before it.
See, that's why everyone wants the V1. Because it actually has... It seems like the V2, they kind of went backwards on it. They should have had it where the... they should have at least done like Matthews effects and had 2 switches on there. Like you could have put one up towards the top and had a boost that was still independent. So, because that's like the biggest complaint with the full tone, full drive 2, is that the boost wasn't independent. And I think the full drive 3 still it wasn't independent, or did they move it to independent on that?
I think they moved it to independent.
Because that was JHS's biggest mod on the full tone. I mean, I don't think they ever tweaked any of the actual drive circuit. They just they turned the boost into a JHS mini bomb or whatever it's called, and made it independent. So, Marissa, do you have anything new?
Well, I'm starting to plan out my baseboard.
Ooh.
Well, hold on. I'm going to really quick. I'm going to interject with my what's new because your what's new ties into our news, kind of. So my new thing's actually pretty simple. I got a new cable from Sinusoid. Yay! Sinusoid Pro Audio Coutures.
She sounds hideous. As I'm sitting here recording on all Sinusoid audio cables.
Yeah. So for a while, I was a big person of a different company that we won't name, but I just recently had to find a new cable supplier, and I moved to Sinusoid because one of my good friends, Albert Mills, started working for him, and Albert's been a good friend of mine for a while now. He's really helped me whenever I needed something. He was the guy I could call. So I've been changing my cables for my wireless system, as Scott likes to say, my wired wireless.
Yeah,
so,
really.
But they just got me a new. It's a foot-long cable, 12 inches. In case you don't want to sound like a hot dog, 12-inch cable, quarter, and it's specially made for my Line 6. It's got a locking quarter-inch on one end and a right-angle quarter-inch on the other. So I get them to match my guitars. So, and then So, Marissa, you're starting your baseboard. Have you bought anything yet?
No, not yet.
Are
You should
using
try out.
anything that we currently have?
Oh,
What?
Are you using anything that we currently have?
No.
Okay. Yay.
so it's
For
just
my
a board
wallet.
sitting there.
Yeah,
But,
are you reusing our old creation board?
Yes.
Sweet.
So shout out to John Snyder, who's got creation boards all throughout this podcast, except for Scott, who's over there alone.
Yeah, I'm one of those boring people with a pedal train still.
Ew.
Yeah, gross. Nasty. But what you could look into is the first thing in our gear news. TC announced the Spectre Drive. Scott, you tell us more about it because you're the one who actually found it.
Yeah, I saw this. This came to us, frankly, from Music Radar, so shout out to them. Linking back to their main website. It looks like TC is really going after the SansAmp market now, transferring some of their solid-state stuff from both their heads for their bass amps, and I think there's tone print on this thing. I mean, this looks pretty feature-packed at its price point.
Okay, the tone print
Yeah.
is like the coolest thing about TC Electronics pedals. Like not the Smorgasbord line, since they don't have it, but a lot of their. I had the Flashback X4 in a Hall of Fame. I had Trinity at one point, and I couldn't imagine that'd be pretty cool. Imagine like a SansAmp style pedal with being able to beam in someone else's sound.
Yeah, at least, especially if they come out with like a standard guitar version instead of just jumping into bass.
Well, TC Electronics really has been catering to the guitar player lately. I think adding some to the bass is pretty cool.
Yeah. I like how
Imagine-
this has like an aux in and headphone jack.
Yeah, this like can be everything. I mean,
Yeah.
a number of the bass players that I work with don't own amps anymore. Especially in the church world, a lot of guys just don't use any onstage amp. They just plug in direct using a SansAmp or a number of the other kind of competing products in that realm. And so not having an amp for practice or anything even, I mean, this can do it all if you have headphones and an aux in.
I think I saw. Hold on, I'm looking at pictures of it. You can change where your gain is, or it says line driver. You can do pre or post. That's your. I wonder if you can change where your pedals, like your. It says your gain is pre and post. I might not know what I'm talking about though. So it's got a built-in 2-drive, a built-in compressor, high, low, mid, treble. Seems like you could do pretty much anything with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the control layout is pretty similar. I have a bass driver DI that is on my air quotes up here baseboard. It's really, I found it broken on Craigslist and fixed it, so I got it really cheap, and I've just used it as kind of a loaner. Like, I never actually play bass live anywhere, so I loan it out to the guys to use. And very similar control layout. What I like about this is it has a bypass and a drive. So like the basic bass driver is either on, off. So that includes all your EQ, that included all that. And then there was like the deluxe bass driver, which had like 3 or 4 presets or like a loop, or there was a few different versions of it, but this is like as compact as a bass driver DI, has that independent drive channel and the EQ. So this can
it has an auxiliary
be really
in.
good.
That's pretty.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it looks like it has a compressor in it too. So, I mean, what more do you need for basic bass playing?
Let's see. Smart EQ, they imported the intelligent EQ section from their much-loved BH800 bass head and re-engineered it to be even more robust tone-shaping tool. That's pretty cool. I mean, TC Electronics has always had pretty decent recording gear, too. I mean, like studio quality
That's where they
gear.
started.
Yeah. Wasn't a lot of their stuff pretty high-end? Like, it was pretty expensive stuff, wasn't it?
They were really early to the reverb world.
Yeah.
And so, like, a TC rack-mounted reverb was, like, the studio, like, golden product for a little while there. But, and I kind of want to go back to the tone print aspect of this. When you think about, like, this might be the only pedal that a bass player uses. So
Yeah,
it's
true.
literally tone printing a celebrity's rig, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty significant. It's not just like I have a TC Trinity, the big cathedral reverb, and yeah, I can get tone prints of like various artists on that, but it's just like just their reverb sound. I still don't have their drive section. I still don't have this, all the other things that make up their sound. I don't have yet. This is like pretty much it if you're doing a simplified bass rig.
They've got quite a few artists already on here, like quite a few bass players that I'm not a whole lot of them are names that are recognizable to me. That's because I'm not a bass player, but I mean, it seems like you've already got a bunch of artists already in on it. There's got to be at least close to 30 tone prints available.
Oh wow.
So, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, that's pretty cool. So, I mean, and some of the tone prints become more popular. Let's see, Reverb, TC Electronics, if you've had a tone print, everyone will tell you to do Room with a View. It's one of their best tone prints. Their flashback series, I think Rob Scallions from Fuel actually had quite a few on there that were really cool. If you haven't listened to a whole lot of Rob Scallion, he's an amazing guitar player, and he has a lot of good sounding stuff. So their tone print, that's probably one of the most underrated technologies I'd say that has come out within like recent history.
Yeah, it's always fun holding your cell phone up to your guitar pickup and making all the weird noise and everyone thinking you're crazy.
It's almost like the reminiscence of the AOL dial-up sound.
Oh, so similar, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I think they're really going to move. If they move harder into the bass world, it'll be really cool because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of new innovation for bass players. I mean, the guitar players,
Yeah, I
there's
could
new
agree
stuff.
with that.
There's new stuff coming out every week. Every company's coming out with something. But very rarely do you see something coming out for bass that's not a total shtick. I mean, if they're coming out with something for bass, it's either something that's already been done, or it's something that is like so outlandish that the only person who will use it is a guy who wears all cow print stuff and sings country songs.
Don't let the hat fool you.
Don't let the hat fool you. And then we also saw in recent news, Diodario, I saw this. I was pretty stoked about it until I talked to Scott and he squashed my dreams. Was the
I'm not too
Diodario.
impressed by it either, by the way. So
Well, you know what? I didn't ask you. You can be out of tune. That's fine. I'm not going to be out of tune.
I have a
Diodario.
tuner on my board, like a normal person.
I have a tuner on my Kemper.
Let's introduce it before guys. Let's introduce it before we totally just slag it here.
We're having a slugfest. We haven't even. Diodario came out with a new headstock tuner. It actually screws on. If your tuning peg has one of the small screws, kind of like a Gibson tuning peg, some of the Fender tuning pegs. I don't know any other ones really off the top of my head, but a lot of them have the little small screws that screw in at 2 or 1 point. You screw it onto that so it doesn't fall off. So it's kind of like a clip-on tuner, but it's taking away the whole problem with the tuner not staying clipped on. You got a lot of people who want to play and move around a lot. Tuners fall off. I thought it was neat because it solved a problem. A lot of people are coming out with stuff that doesn't solve problems anymore. A lot of people love clip-on tuners. I use one not all the time on my electrics, but all the time on acoustics. Electrics, it really depends. I usually use my Kemper for tuning, or I have my Line 6 G70 has a built-in tuner. And if I need to mute, I'll use that. If I'm kind of playing and I hear something out of tune and I'm looking for it, I'll use my Kemper. But acoustic, I always have one on the headstock because none of my acoustics have built-in tuners. So I think it's a really cool problem solver for people who don't run boards and don't have a tuner on the ground, or people who move around away from their board a lot. If I'm trying to think, there's a guitar player, his name's Casper, and he plays in Casper's 911 band down in Atlanta, who I've talked to online a few times. I believe he moved to headstock tuners. He moves around a lot. That guy does not stay in the same place on his stage. So I think it solves a problem. So you guys can go on and hate on it now, and I'm going to sit back and eat my quesadilla.
Okay. So my initial thought was, so I'm familiar with its predecessor. So this is actually, the full name is the NS Micro Clip Free Tuner, is the new version. The old version of the NS Micro has this kind of click lock clamp mechanism. So it's not the typical where it has a spring in it and it has a kind of counter force that you got to adjust. This just has a very slim piece of plastic that just kind of clamps down and tries to lock in place. So one of the guys I play with, he has one of those and has it on his Martin, and it falls off all the time. So that's kind of where my first impression of this product came from. So having it screw into a tuning peg, and have it be semi-permanent like that is an improvement, and understand where that comes from. My grievance with it is that they raised the price from $12 to $20 on the product.
Actually, the prices are all over the place.
Are they really?
Googled it. Musician Friends has it for $34.95. Reverb has it for $20. Sweetwater has it for $25.
Okay. So you're saying there's room for flip at the $20 price?
From somebody that does not like the concept, because I would have to buy like 5 of them at $20. No.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to have one on every guitar.
Well, there's that.
I would feel like I would.
You got to go for uniformity.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Is that a real
'Cause
word?
then I could
Am
just
I making
get
things up?
No, that's a word.
Okay, cool.
Because then I could just get rid of my pedal tuner.
Oh, see, I still can't get rid of that because my pedal tuner is my buffer.
What are you using,
I have a
Boss?
separate buffer.
I have a TU3 on both my boards.
What buffer are you using, Chris?
This one's mine mini buffer.
Oh, okay. I've never had a
and
buffer.
it has yeah, mine's split, so my volume or my tuner isn't even in my signal chain.
You run it out of the EB Junior?
No, the buffer has a split.
Oh,
so
the buffer
my
has
setup is, yeah, so it's wireless system into the buffer, and that splits into the rest of the board and tuner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the issue, the thing about the clip-on tuner, I think, is it's more of one of those things, either you get it, or you like it, or you don't. There's not a lot of people who are kind of middle of the road on it. They like clip-on tuners, or they don't. But I think this is one of the things that's just solving a problem. Like you said, the Martin guy, he says it falls everywhere. The only thing is that I think that if you're looking at the price, I get it. It's $20 minimum to have a tuner on one guitar. So then you have to move it to other. But I think it's more... I don't think it's a replacement for a floor tuner or having a rack tuner or whatever other tuner you're going to use. I think it's more of for the people who have, especially for people who use multiple guitars like Chris or myself. I've got 3 electrics that I use. Scott, how many do you have? Have you lost count yet?
10.
Do you really have 10 electric guitars?
Yeah.
Can you name all of them? It's like having kids. Can you name them all? If you can't name them all, you need to get rid of one.
Yeah, I'm in the process right now of rethinking my apartment because I'm running out of space. And
He's just gonna buy a house. He's like, I bought a house because I want more guitars.
I'm trying to downsize the collection a little bit right now. Because some of these were just given to me, so I'm just fixing them up and getting rid of them. Yeah, I have too many instruments.
So this goes for our next episode. It's called Intervention. Revenge of the Intervention, is that what we can call it?
Revenge of the Scott.
Revenge of
Make
the
him sell
Scott.
everything.
Yeah. That's it. That's where we talk
With
about
special
how
guest Dave Ramsey, and we're gonna.
Oh my gosh.
I think we would all tune out at that point.
They're actually doing a Dave Ramsey thing at my church, and I feel like I should go because I'm not responsible enough with my finances, but then I think about it and I can't keep track of all those dang envelopes. So they're like, you have an envelope for this, you have an envelope for that. I'm like, where do I have an envelope for my envelopes? Like, the only envelope I need is an envelope filter. So
nice. So yeah, rounding back to this topic, I can see owning one for your one acoustic. I get that. Like that's real. I think that's really the market for this thing. I say if you have a Taylor, you're out of luck because Taylors don't have that screw.
Yeah, neither does my Firebird. So, do guitar gods influence our gear?
Yes,
Scott, and no.
So.
Scott, I want to. Scott just talked about his John Mayer strat last week, so let's hear this one.
Yes. I would say yes and no. I would say guitar gods get us to look at gear. And there is sometimes that piece of gear is an important part of their sound. Sometimes it's not. So, do I care what Jack White is playing right now? Enough to talk about it on a podcast, and I'm going to forget about the EVH Wolfgang after this. That's just what it is because Jack White is not my guitar god. Now, I saw Mute Math play a few months back. It was a Halloween show, and they pulled out that harmony that they have with the three gold foils, and I'm just like lusting after it. I've never played it. I have no idea if that thing is actually a good piece of equipment or not. But I'm like, dang, that thing's cool. I want to try it out. So, I don't know. I have a John Mayer Strat. I have a Jazzmaster because I love Nels Cline. I have an Epiphone Century that James Bay was running around with. And that got me looking at it. And then I played it and I was like, whoa, this is a whole different animal. And I started liking it because of what the guitar was, not because I was trying to look like James Bay.
Yeah, he did that beautiful song, and it was just kind of lame. So.
That was James Blunt.
But they're both British, right?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Tomato, tomato.
That's racist.
So, I mean, Chris, you and the Edge?
More of like more recently, it's more like me and Billy Joe Armstrong. But at the same time, for when I'm like doing P and W, yes, it's still the Edge. So I mean, I have my Strat, I have an AC30 clone, but at the same time, I still have my two juniors and needing like a Marshall Plexi.
So here's another discussion to get Chris riled up. Is Billy Joe Armstrong considered a guitar god? I love the sigh.
First to Marissa to answer that question, right?
Actually, I would honestly say no.
I would have to say no.
Because you have people like Keith Urban that used back in like the 05 to 2012 era. So that was like the original big reason I wanted juniors, and then getting into Green Day more, that just more solidified it.
Dude, I wanted a melody maker because Joan Jett, like, she made those guitars look just rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of my guitars, so I'll have to say yes, 100%. Guitar gods influence our gear, 100%.
Yeah.
The reason why I own an SG is because I remember the moment I wanted to pick up a guitar. I was watching, my friend Jay he let me listen to some AC/DC. I got AC/DC live at Donington. And if you've ever seen that DVD, it's one of that's the reason I picked up a guitar. Chris Slade's on drums, hitting the hi-hat. Angus Young comes out, holds his hand up, holding the pick. And just the crowd goes nuts. Mm-hmm. And Thunderstruck. And one of my first guitars I ever got was an Epiphone SG 400. And my SG that I own today, 100% was influenced because of Angus Young. I mean, I can play most of his stuff, but that's like one of the main reasons. My Firebird, I always loved the way that, oh man, what's his name? The albino white guy.
Johnny Winter.
That's it. You laugh, but you knew who I was talking about. Johnny Winters, he played one, and they looked phenomenal. They looked rock and roll. And I had my Telecaster because of Prince. So I'd have to say 100% Guitar Gods influenced our gear. I mean,
now can I reframe the question? Is it Guitar God at a time with a specific guitar, or is it whatever they're playing currently? So like we talked about John Mayer switching to PRS recently. I haven't ran out and bought a Paul Reed Smith.
I think we identify with a certain period of their musical career that influenced a certain time in our life.
So like John Mayer Continuum album, like that sound.
I saw John Mayer on the Continuum tour. That sound will always be something that I saw him with. Who's the blonde chick that left Lance Armstrong? Sheryl Crow. She. Well, I'll get there. I saw him and Sheryl Crow. I saw them live, and that was the moment that I fell in love with John Mayer as a guitar player. So.
I would have to say.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was gonna say. Well, my examples aren't exactly the best because, like, the Edge has always used a Strat. He has always used the Explorer. And 90% of the time, Billy Joe has used either a Junior or Strat. I think Marissa would probably agree with me on this, is that it kind of, for our influences, it probably doesn't matter as much, right?
So if Ernie Ball came out with a Billy Joe Armstrong model,
it would depend on what it looked like, because at the same time, I still don't want to get something I'm not fully, in love with.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Ernie Ball
the Edge plays the old casinos. I'm not a huge fan on those, so I would probably not get one unless it was like vintage, stupid good deal, and I was in the place of like, sure, why not? I'll try it. But it's not one of those that it's going to run out and get. You have something to say?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, so you say that, but you still would buy it because his name is on it.
Oh, getting called out by the wife.
Are we talking about like the signature Edge Strat? Or...
No.
No.
A Billy Joe signature, anything.
I still feel like I would probably say no, just because I'm not a huge fan. It's like you with Adam Clayton. Would you buy his Warwick, or would you rather have his jazz bass?
His jazz bass.
Okay. Because you're not a fan of how the Warwick looks. Or is it the price tag?
Probably the price tag.
I'm sure the price tag has a big influence. That's like I really bad want an Ernie Ball Luke, because Steve Lukather's honestly one of the he's a guitar god of mine. He's been on so many albums. I mean, anything with Toto. He's a phenomenal guitar player. He was on a lot of Michael Jackson stuff. A lot of, the main guitar stuff that you think of Michael Jackson. It's going to be Steve, but the price tag on him's kind of up there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
we can cut this
awkward. We can cut the awkward silence in post.
I'm getting like stared at. So
do we need to give you guys a break for a minute, or?
Yeah, we'll link her a minute. Okay, go ahead.
I would say yes.
To
the whole thing in general.
Of buying it just because somebody's name's on it?
No. What's the topic?
Buying
Do guitar gods
somebody's
influence
name's
our
on it.
gear?
Okay, we're going back to the main topic. Gotcha.
I would say yes.
Well, yeah, I think we all kind of agreed on that.
Yeah, I think it's just we disagree on what level. if it has a name on it, are you going to buy it just because it has a name, or are you going to buy that style because you saw them play it? That's like, I mean, I've got my Telecaster's a Fender American Deluxe. I mean, Prince didn't play a Fender. His original was a Hohner. And then he had a luthier replicate it a few times. And then he's got the Cloud guitar, which
Schecter.
I want one. Huh?
I think the Cloud guitar was a Schecter, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
Sounds
you are
right.
mistaken. No.
With
No,
that
it was
church,
made-
though.
No. Yeah, it'll church. I mean, it's cloud, God's in the clouds. And
It's clouds.
I can listen.
Just
I
have to
can
be
make
playing
this
There is a
theological.
cloud.
I can make this theologically relevant. If not, I'll get Cody Fields on here, and he'll make it happen for me. So, because no one wants to debate that man in theology. If you don't know who that is, that's the owner of Westminster Effects, and it's nothing better than being friends with him and seeing him debate people online. It's too much fun. So, so I guess we all agree yes. Just at what level are we going to actually?
Yeah.
But we're going to actually hit our final topic. Main and final topic is cloning. So I think we're going to talk more about the ethics of cloning. You know, we've all kind of agreed that there's about 3 different styles of pedals that get cloned.
The big 3.
Well,
big
let's
three.
start by defining what a cloned pedal is.
Okay,
For-
I'd say I personally think a clone pedal is a derivative of an existing pedal that can be traced back farther. That can be traced to an original circuit. So, like
Their version of insert.
their
that would be-
version of a product that at one point was groundbreaking or new or is a industry standard.
Yeah.
So the Tube Screamer, TS808, TS9. I think we said the Klon
and the Blues Breaker.
and the Blues Breaker. So, and I think, and
And
everyone,
it's not exclusive to just that either. I mean, there's
Oh, no.
there's chorus clones. TC famously did one very recently.
the Dimension.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
I have both.
there's various there's part for part. That's a hard thing to say, and we're going to cut that out later.
We can fix that in post.
Yeah, we'll
We'll
fix
say
that
it
in
3
post.
more times fast, and we'll pick the best.
Beetlejuice. Yeah, we'll get there's we're gonna make this circuit exactly the way it is, and it's gonna be a complete reproduction, down to even magic diodes and transistors, and then there's we're trying to get the sound and recreate it, using modern techniques too. I mean, so there's just a whole wide gambit of what gets lumped into this clone term.
See, my thing is if you're doing a part for part recreation, that's a copy.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're doing something, if you're all right, so JHS is famous for saying, we took this pedal that we loved, but we made it sound the way we feel like it should sound. That's a clone, in my opinion. You're taking the original circuit and you're changing something in it to make it sound what you consider better.
Right.
And then
I would agree with that.
So, and then copies are direct copies. And then if you're, I don't think there's anything that could be considered. I think those are your 2 main categories. There's not a whole lot of anything different besides, unless you take the pedal and you try to make it something and you butcher it, then you just made a crappy copy. But, which those have been done before too.
Yeah. Sometimes the crappy copy is the magic one.
This is true too.
When did that happen?
Lots of times.
Yeah.
That's
In my
argument
personal
for lots.
experience, if you want to consider the Ibanez TS5 from the Sound Tank series, if you want to consider that their cheap take on their more expensive circuit, that's the best out of all my other non-standard 808 TS9
But I would
two
the
Germans
problem
that I have.
The problem is it's the same company making it. I would say that a clone is whenever a different company makes it.
Right.
There is this whole intellectual property component of this, and we were trying to hold off and get into the ethics part of it, but where the law applies versus where the ethics applies to it, because ethics are rules that we have that supersede or are on top of laws. They're not doing something unethical is not always illegal, one of those kind of scenarios. So that is where most of this kind of controversy seems to come up, is another company is creating something that one company created, and when is that okay and when is that not okay?
I'd say it's one of the big things that I consider being okay and not okay is if you're making a pedal. I think JHS did this really well with their clone. JHS said, as long as Bill from Klon isn't making the clone, we'll make our clone. And once the Klon KT, I'm going to mix this up. The Klon KTR came out, JHS stopped making the clone. And it's kind of funny because I'm actually using JHS as a positive example on cloning whenever they get usually shed in a negative light, thanks to just craziness in the guitar community. But that's like, okay, so Blues Breakers. Does Marshall still make a Blues Breaker pedal?
Does Marshall still make any pedals?
I don't think stopped.
I think they've stopped. They're making cell phones now and cell phone speakers and refrigerators.
Yep.
So their Bluetooth speaker is actually pretty good.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah, I have a buddy who has it.
Huh. Wasn't it like expensive as all get out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
I didn't pay for it. I enjoy it when we have a barbecue.
Okay, so I think one of my things is I wouldn't say it's a make or break stipulation, but it's heavily considered as if the pedal in question is still in production. But and that gets superseded whenever they're doing something with the pedal that isn't being made by the original company and is different enough that you could put it out and people not really know what it is. You know what I mean? There's a lot of pedals that are like, you've got a Blues Breaker pedal, the King of Tone. All right, it's a Blues Breaker circuit style. Mm-hmm. But people don't really consider it like that. You know what I mean? It's not like they're like, oh, well, that's the Analog Man's Blues Breaker. No, that's the King of Tone. That's the Prince of Tone. That's just what it is. And I think if you've gotten far enough away from the original design where it's kind of become its own thing, then it's okay. Now, if you're putting it out there and you're using artwork that's super similar, you're not even trying to cover up the fact that it's almost a direct copy, then it's almost kind of an arrogant, smug thing. The Centura Drive from Sierra Tone, I think they're based in Malaysia, so they can get away with it. Yeah. Legally. Yeah. Ethically, I probably wouldn't buy one. Number one,
but the Klon's not in production anymore.
But the KTR is.
Yeah, but this is like how... So, just quick Googling here. I didn't know this, but the Marshall pedals are still in production. Those big old metal
still
ones.
Carry them, though?
I don't know, but that's crazy because I still have a jackhammer from that series.
Is it the Silver Series?
Yeah. They're heavy as a tank, but they make the Blues Breaker too. So technically, Marshall still makes a Blues Breaker. But because it's not that generation anymore, is it okay? Whereas like how like the Klon Centaur is no longer in production as a Centaur. There is the KTR, which is arguably different, but also still the same idea from the same company. So has that line been crossed now?
Well, the thing, I think what's happened with the guitar industry or the pedal industry, all right, so I'm going to use Wampler as a example. They have the Tumnus, however you want to pronounce it. That is a Klon style pedal. And a lot of people says it sounds really close to a Klon, the Centaur. My main thing is, though, is they don't, another part is they don't advertise it with the only thing similar is it's gold and it has a mythical creature on it. So I would say that they're kind of staying away from it. Now, Matthews Effects for a while had their clone, Klone. You know what that is. So it was spelled the same way as JHS. Matthews Effects had something shooting something. I think it... Chris, do you know what it was? Was it an actual, like... It looked like a centaur. It looked like a mythical creature with a bow and arrow, which was on the Klon centaur. Now that's something which he no longer produces it. He revamped it and called it, I think it's the Architect.
Yeah, that's his current clone.
It's a 3-band EQ. That's another change, and that's a change with Wampler they did.
Only on the deluxe did they do that though. The original Tumnus was it's just differently voiced, but it's doing a similar effect. Yeah,
but it's a 3-band EQ. Once again, you're going far enough kind of away from it. You can tell what it's influenced by, but you're moving away from it. But one of my arguments on cloning is a lot of these effects are going to be, it's kind of like how amps. A lot of amps are based off of amps that were found in an RCA catalog. I mean, Fender, Marshall, and Vox. Those are your like 3 that you're going to be off of. And I mean, all of Marshalls sound like a Marshall. I mean, a little different, but like they all have the same close sound. Fenders have that Fender clean sound. Pedals, you've got the Klon, the TS9, and the drive pedals. You've got the Klon, the TS9, and the Centaur. That's like delay pedals. You've got a D bucket, you know, Brigadier. You've got this. There's not a whole lot that you're moving away from, but you're able to make your take on it. Yeah. It's kind of like there's only so many chords you can play, but it's the way in which you move the chords, it's the notes, and it's the order you play them in and the timing.
Right.
There's only so many frets on a guitar.
All right, so let me ask you this, since you're talking about like the differences. JHS has the muffaletta, which is like 9 different fuzzes.
Yeah.
You have the
hold on.
bonsai.
It's not 9. It's 9 different big muffs.
Okay, so yeah, it all one's similar pedal, and you have the bonsai, which is 9 tube screamers, and then you have the Earthquaker Palisades, which is infinity different versions. Yeah. Would you consider those still different enough, or would you still consider those more of a direct copy and just having different takes, I guess?
I have less of an issue with those just because they're not doing like a part for part or like direct substitution for any of them. Mm-hmm. I have a muffaletta, so obviously I'm a little biased here. I don't feel ethically wrong with that one, right? It's fun. It was like my first muff pedal, so like I didn't know which kind I wanted, and so it was kind of the safe bet to get of like I can try all of these.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with every demo I've heard of the bonsai, I can't really hear much of a difference between all the different tube screamers. That's kind of my opinion of it, so I'm not really interested in it. I think it's a cool pedal, and I also, because those circuits are so complicated, what they had to do with all the electrical engineering, relay switching, all that kind of stuff, that was a lot of work, and so it became an original circuit through how much work they did.
It's innovative.
Yes. Okay. It was new and it was different. Like how with like Wampler's Tumnus, they were the first clone that, to my knowledge, that fit in a mini enclosure. That was clearly an original circuit in some capacity or another in original engineering. If I'm grabbing a DIY, pedal board kind of forum thing circuit, tweaking one capacitor on it and selling it as an original design, that's definitely an issue. Mm-hmm. So,
well, the hard part about it is you've got these people who want to do exact copies, and they're making it look bad on the people. All right, so Brian Wampler, people say that he has an amazing ear. He can find out how something sounds and build something to sound just like it. All of his pedals that are amps in a box. Mm-hmm. You've got all of these different things, that sounds so amazing. I mean, at what point would you have to sit there and just say that pretty much everything Brian Wampler did is copying other people? I mean, it's kind of what he's doing, but he's taking a sound.
Yeah, he's having to make it
He's engineering
his own. Yeah.
He's engineering. He's taking a sound that he likes, or a sound, and he's like, it should sound like this, and he's engineering it into something that's replicating.
Sure.
I think that's the difference. If you're not engineering, you're not doing anything, and you're just doing a part for part copy, then that's where the ethics comes in. That's where you're being unethical, and especially if you're not telling people about it. Like that was, I'm going to bring it up, the JHS issue with the Devi Ever pedals. Mm-hmm. There was the argument that Josh part for part copied a Devi Ever fuzz, and that became, a fuzz that he put out, and he was dishonest about it. Whether that's true, whether that's not true, whatever, Devi Ever has her own issues she has to deal with, but that's the line that should be drawn, in my opinion. That's where it goes from cloning to copying.
Definitely.
It goes from to a point where a pedal builder should be somewhat flattered. If I built a pedal and Brian Wampler wanted to replicate it, I mean, I'd have to get new pants. I'd be so flipping excited.
Yeah, but you're talking as Jonathan Diaz, you're talking about Jonathan Diaz, the one guy, not Diaz pedals, and you're struggling to move 300 units a year, and suddenly Brian Wampler stole your design. That's a very different situation that you'd be sitting in.
But how many of these pedal builders are in that situation?
I think that's a big part of the Devi Ever argument for her. I don't know. I'm trying not to.
I would say at the point in which this happened, Devi Ever was more popular than JHS, because this was early in the JHS history.
Yeah, I really want to avoid going down this road.
Okay, we're not going to go down this road.
Okay.
If you guys want to hear more about it, you can go visit Adam Dolhanik's blog that he talks about this, and Everyone Fights on, because that's really fun too. But
yeah, I'm ignorant in this area. I will admit I'm ignorant, and so I don't know. I've seen this argument with a few different builders, especially lately. There's a few forums where certain builders will say, "Look, this is a clone design," and I'll say, "Prove it," and they'll show me the circuit, and yeah, it is, and that seems to happen a bit. And with major builders when they were starting, and I'm not going to name names just because I just don't want to start stuff, but I've seen that, and part of it is just from this is the books we learned off of, and
well, Brian Wampler put out a book that's considered like the Bible for pedal builders, how to mod and build pedals. Like people have been bugging him to issue it again. I think he's got a digital version out, but I don't think he does actual hard copy books anymore.
Yeah. Well, I will make an analogy of how often I will play a lick or a riff on guitar, and not knowingly, I mean, sometimes, I don't think it's a John Mayer riff, but I learned playing guitar from learning how to play John Mayer songs so much that periodically I'll play something and it'll sound John Mayer. I don't know if I'm copying him or not. Sometimes it's just a muscle thing.
I open every service with Thunderstruck, so
yeah. Hold your pick up in the air, the lighting's coming in. Yeah, I can see this now.
No, I think that's one of the hard parts about the argument is that it's not a black and white issue, and it really, and honestly, a lot of people are influenced by how much you like the builder. Brian Wampler's a great guy. I'm not saying he couldn't do any wrong, but it would take a lot for me to sit there and be like, oh, shame on you, Brian. Or, I mean, and then Rick Matthews is a prime example of a guy who openly admits this is a derivative of this. Mm-hmm. And I think transparency is a big thing that comes into play too, which is my main argument.
Think about how we were talking earlier about the big ear woodcutter.
Oh, that's the most transparent thing ever. Grant said, I've got this one woodcutter that just sounds better than any other one I've ever played, and every time I put a woodcutter out, I want it to sound like that. I've got this rat, that was made by the guy who used the name woodcutter.
Yeah, when he was signing the pedal for its like conformance.
Yep. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, because I don't look at I guess rat would be another one we could throw in there with pedals that are very heavily copied. But there's just so many. There's only so much you can do. That's like tape delays. And I think dirt drives are the ones that are the most people are most annoyed about, because I think they're honestly so easy to make, compared to other pedals. There's your delay pedals, you've got all these different chips and everything, but whenever you come to drive pedals, that's one of the first pedals that people learn how to make, is a fuzz, because it's the most simplest one. And then you get all these people they've made 3 pedals and they know everything there is about making pedals, and they want to call out these big builders.
Well, and think about how a Roland Space Echo is like a prime example that every delay pedal is trying to emulate, and it's a selling point. Oh yeah, it can do the Roland Space, or it can do a Benson Echo Rec, or it can do the Full Tone has a direct copy of the Maestro. What's that tape echo? I had the Echoplex. Yeah.
That's the tape echo everyone, that and the Roland Space Echo are the ones that everyone's trying to emulate. I mean, how many does it have? Multi-head? Can it do this? That's.
Yep.
But I mean, how many people are out here doing DIY echo pedals? Not that many. Much. I mean, look at reverb pedals. Most of those are they have to be programmed by a computer. You have to buy a certain chip. You have to, that's one thing that I watched a video of Rick messing with the conductor back before he put it out, and he was, making all these weird noises just by changing stuff in the computer programming of a chip. Leon from Pelican Noise Works started working with programming chips, and it's like, that's stuff that people don't do at their house. So not a lot of people complain that this is a copy of this. This is a clone of this. But all of a sudden you build 2 dirt pedals and you get on this pedestal and get to tell people what they're doing wrong. I'm looking at you, the gear page.
So you ultimately think that like dirt, like people are a little more protective of it because, they put all their time and energy into it because they had to pick the exact chip that they wanted. But like you said, compared to like delays, you have like 5 main types. Just like you could argue you have types of overdrives or dirt.
Yeah.
But everyone is like head over heels over dirt.
Yeah, my main wrapping. So I'll do my wrap up point. My wrap up point with cloning is there's a few parts to it, but the main thing is dirt pedals get scrutinized the most because they're the easiest to build, in the sense of that's what everyone starts with. They start with a fuzz, they move to overdrive, and then they go from there. Or they start modding pedals and they see the similarities. Another part of it is it's all about the transparency, and if it's a derivative or a direct copy. Those are my 3 things that I look at when I'm looking at a pedal. I'm going to keep saying, all right, so we'll look at Keeley. Keeley wants this pedal he literally has a pedal that is his case, but sounds like his modded version of a BD2. But no one bats an eye at that because he's transparent about it. He's like, no, this is literally what a blues driver modded by me sounds like, but it's in my case. And it doesn't say Boss on it. It doesn't say...
Well, and now it's on a proper circuit board and some of those kind of things too. So it's a little more reliable than cracking open a Boss, desoldering stuff, and throwing new things in.
Yeah, but the whole point is it's a pretty much a copy, but he's transparent about it. But it's also derivative. It's not a direct copy. So I think those are my three things I look at.
Right.
So I mean, look, here's one that would be like my argument against it: the Bellwether by Walrus Audio. Does everyone know what it's pretty much of a copy of?
Mm-hmm.
A Memory Man, right? So
You're correct.
why aren't people up in arms about? Huh?
You're correct. You just had a long pause.
Oh, I was waiting for. I didn't hear anyone agree with me because I could have been wrong, but I was about 90% sure. I was waiting.
No, you're 100% right.
Okay, it is. If you put them next to each other, they sound even to the point where they have a little bit of noise to them.
Right.
Memory Mans are known for having a little bit of noise. Walrus Audio Bellwether, I've saw people complain. It adds some noise. Yes, because it's a copy of a pedal that adds noise to your pedal. I don't think they don't cover up that it's a clone of that, but it's a delay pedal. People aren't making them at their house. They're not throwing a fit. They're not saying,
Right.
"Oh my gosh, I could have built that for $20," and and it's the same parts as that's in this. Like that's not the argument. When you start getting into modulation and stuff like that, people aren't throwing a fit. But if it's a drive pedal that you can build at home, everyone's on their pedestal, up in arms, throwing shade at everyone. So that's pretty much my opinion on it.
Yeah, I'll add a component that they are till they aren't. I mean, there's the King of Tone clones that are out there now,
Ooh, yeah.
and like,
Which I own one.
oh yeah, you do.
The
Where
Dolly
people
by
don't,
Westminster.
people don't seem to have issues with those as much as they do with a J Rocket Archer, for example.
Because you can clone a clone, but you can't clone a clone.
My head hurts. Let's end the episode.
All right, let's thank our sponsor.
All right, well, let's thank Lambertone Pickups. I don't think they cloned anyone, but thank you, Lambertone Pickups, for supporting us, and we will have a demo out of the Lambertone the Cremas as soon as I'm able to get a good video of it. So.
You could just send me your guitar and
Oh yeah, I wonder what the shipping on that would be. Too dang
probably
much.
$50.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks all.
Bye guys.
Bye.